Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of different experiences with Sasquatch, and I guess when I was younger, I didn't believe in it. I thought, just like everyone else, it's yeah, someone would have found evidence by now, and yeah, it hasn't happened. So, but yeah, I've had a few experiences. I remember one time I was about 15 years old, and we have a curfew bylaw in our community. And I was walking over. It was nighttime, and it was about 11 o'clock at night. And I was walking with another guy from here. And as we were walking over, we saw something in front of us, and we thought it was the night watchman. So we slowed down and we watched this, this thing crawl over the railing of the boardwalk, so we marked off where he was getting off, and we thought, people used to grab people's legs a long time ago and go under the bridge and grab their legs. So we marked off where he was getting off, and once we got there, was the biggest drop off of the whole bridge. And so anyways, when I got home and started thinking about it, just thinking how big that thing had to have been just to lift his leg up past the railing to get over the boardwalk. So I guess that was my first encounter. It wasn't enough to make me believe in anything, because obviously but it made me just think about it a bit more. Second time I was out for co-management. I used to work with the fisheries program, and we had to drag this big pipe up the trail, and so we went across on the boat, across the channel, and went to this one river, and we dragged this massive pipe up there, and we stopped for a rest, and I went to go wander in the forest a bit, and it was pouring rain that day, and in the middle of nowhere there's this massive footprint, about size 14, 15-foot print in the mud, and I put my footprint beside it, and my footprint barely sunk in the mud compared to what was the one we saw there. So, again, wasn't enough to make me believe in it. I thought, well, it's interesting. Anyone could have done it, but it made me definitely think more about Sasquatch. And then the third one, I was out on a camping trip, and as we went out camping, there was probably about 6 or 7 of us out camping on this one island. And then as we were camping, my brother and I, we started a big fire, and we started throwing more and more branches on the fire. And as we're throwing branches on, something caught the corner of my eye, something moved, and I was looking in the corner, and it wasn't too far. It was probably about 50 or 60 feet from us. And I thought it was a bear, so I was looking for a bear, and I could see you could see the eyes, the reflection of the fire off its eyes, and I was looking at this thing, and as the fire started to catch, the fire started to get bigger and bigger, and then as the fire got bigger, it started to light up his whole upper body, and this thing was just sitting there watching us, and I was stuck watching, like, what am I looking at? And it definitely didn't look like a bear, and it started to light up more and more, and this whole upper body, just this massive upper body was like, and then anyways, all the other people that I was with, they were trying to talk to me, but I was obviously just paying attention to what I was looking at, because I was confused as what it was. So anyways, when they were looking at me, yeah, they could see me looking at it, so they looked over and they saw the same thing. So as soon as everyone looked over, all 6 or 7 people looked over, that Sasquatch stood up and started walking in the bush, and it just it freaked everyone out. And so from that day on, I mean, I've always been a believer in Sasquatch, and I don't try and convince people, because you tell people these stories and they think, oh, you're crazy, or it doesn't exist. But what I saw that day was definitely very scary. And I said, I've been working with bears, I've had killer whales and humpback whales come close to my kayak, and but that was definitely one of the scariest things. But I got home, after that trip, and when I went back home, I just started to think about, the encounter. I talked to a lot of the elders about that, and they told me lots of stories about Sasquatch and the history of Sasquatch in our communities. The thing wasn't aggressive. It wasn't. It just seemed like it was curious. The thing was just sitting there, kneeling down, just watching us. So that was it was definitely pretty interesting. I do have one more story, and this story was really interesting because after I actually had the encounter with the Sasquatch on that island, it brought back another memory when I was a kid, and for some reason I totally blocked this out. But I was about 7 years old. I was fairly young, and at the time, people used to give money. I used to take down $20 and go give it to a boat operator, and people used to pool their money together to go out and do some clam digging or any food harvesting. So I took down my $20 and went out on an open boat, and we went to go clam dig in one of the passes here. And as we were there, everyone kind of got to the beach, and the tide was low. And it was winter time, and everyone was all scattered out throughout the beach, and there was all these lanterns all over the place. And as we were digging, we're a few hours into the dig and digging for clams and cockles, and the people from the upper shore started to move down, and they started coming down, saying that they're hearing some sounds from the bush. Nobody really paid attention to it. You know, when you're out there clam digging, you just want to dig as fast as you can and try and get some clams, and so everyone just kept on digging, and then more and more people started moving down, saying they kept on hearing these sounds, and they're getting louder and louder, and so soon enough, they started to get closer, and the people kind of midway at the beach could start to hear these sounds, and it just sounded like these awful sounds, like someone was getting murdered, or it was someone was being tortured or something. It was really weird, this loud screaming, it was just, yeah, it was getting really loud, and it was a really uncomfortable feeling, and just hearing that, and so everyone started to get scared, and then everyone started to move further and further down, and then one of the elders that was with us, he started to hear it, and he's deaf, so the sound was getting very loud to the point where he could hear it. And when he started hearing these sounds of screaming, and he started panicking and told everyone to get on the boat, and so everyone started going toward the boat, and he was panicking even more, yelling at everyone to get on the boat. So everyone jumped on the boat at the same time, and unfortunately we couldn't push the boat off. So there's a few people trying to push the boat off the shore, but we couldn't do it because everyone was on there, and the boat was. So we kept on trying to do it, and the sounds were getting louder and louder, and everyone had all their flashlights shining on the shore, and trying to look for whatever it was, because it was getting very close. And as the sound started to get louder, the elder got really scared, and we couldn't get the boat off the beach, so he ran onto the boat, and he grabbed this big lead cannonball, and he started slamming the side of his punt. And this thing must have been denting his punt, but he was slamming it as hard as he could, trying to make noise, just so he could scare whatever it was that was coming closer. And as he was doing this, we finally got the boat off. Some guys pushed the boat, and we were able to get it off, and then we started driving, and I remember we were driving away, and everyone had all their spotlights all shining on the shoreline. And we never did see what came out, but it was definitely an experience that I remember as a kid, and for some reason I think it was just so scary that I just blanked it out. But yeah, that was another one of the experiences I had. And the elders always say that Sasquatch, they definitely rely on clams and cockles as a source of food. So.